This is a Geek Culture Cast network production.
Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Zur and the Kodan Armada.
This is Warp My TARDIS podcast.
Funny, she doesn't look Druish.
With your hosts, KJ the Comic Guy and Chulok.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
I'm the Doctor. I'm a Time Lord. I'm from the planet Gallifrey in the constellation of Kasterborous. I'm 903 years old, and I'm the man who's going to save your lives and all 6 billion people on the planet below.
And welcome back to Warp My TARDIS. It seems like it's been forever, Mr. Chulok, since we have been on the air as Warp My TARDIS.
You know, we say it's been forever, but to be completely honest, I think we've had more Warp My TARDIS recordings than Legends of the Panel recordings.
In the last while, I think so.
Yeah. So, right before we hit this record button, we've been having a plague of tech difficulties. Finally, it seems like we have narrowed it down to what is causing certain problems, which is good. And another thing I wanted to point out tonight, this is officially episode 21. 20 just creeped up on us, and it was the episode of Flash Gordon. And in the first initial week that we pushed that out, we had 63 immediate downloads, which is pretty high for our normal download count for initial subscribers. So apparently they love that show. Don't know why, because there is elevator music in it, if you remember.
Yes, there was a moment where it's like, we'll be back in a moment.
We'll be back in a moment. Doo-doo-doo. But anyway, yeah, it has been a while. It's so good to be back on the air. You created a new intro. Tell us about how you did that.
I took an audio file and I layered some bits.
Oh my god! All right, so what's this background music that's going on right now? This hum.
So we actually now have a sound effect music that is supposed to be the inside of a droning on music for inside of a ship. So not really music, but it's just a room tone that's supposed to be inside of a spaceship. I found that on luckily a
Creative Commons.
Creative Commons. The music itself that was underneath the kind of spooky Rod Serling-esque thing, that was also Creative Commons.
There you go.
We love our Creative Commons music. And all the other bits are property of the respective property owners, whether it be Paramount, BBC, or I think mostly Paramount.
Paramount owns everything. And if not, though, Disney. Disney owns everything.
If Last Starfighter is MGM or not.
It's probably owned by Disney now at this point, so just say Disney.
That's one of those anyways. But no, the only thing that was missing there is we don't have any Terminator or Alien references, which would tie us into tonight's topic of conversation when we get there, which is movies of James Cameron. We're specifically looking at 3 movies from across his career. We're looking at Alien. We're looking with Sigourney Weaver, the Ridley Scott book. We're looking at Terminator, not Terminator 2, which is also up on my whiteboard as my memory jogger. And we're looking at Avatar. So, I mean, James Cameron is a fellow Canadian. Big thumbs up there, eh? I throw it out there only because, he's been extremely innovative in the work he's done in film. A big purveyor of CGI, from physical effects that had to be done back when he shot Alien to Terminator 2, where we actually had, the flowy metal man, to Avatar, which was 3/4 CGI. He's been a pioneer in the industry, and it was something I thought about when we talked about. We haven't done our 2 movies putting them up against each other, and tonight I thought, well, we need something that's fantasy and we need something that's sci-fi. What can we hit? Where can we go to find someone who's going to fit both of those bills? And I thought, well, let's look at a director this time, because we've done actors who have been in multiple roles. We've done movies that you could basically put against each other and say they're the same storyline, whether one's in sci-fi and one's in fantasy or not. Although it's a space opera. Don't know where that reference came from. But and we have to talk about that because that happened this week.
And we also have some other news from comic stuff, but we'll shelve that for a bit. But
no, so yeah. But our other big news has all been talking about Canadian versus American. Holy crap! The border scare that's going to go on for the potential of you coming up for Toronto Comic-Con, dude.
Yeah, I know. You and I were talking about this while we were trying to fix some audio glitches before the show, and there's been some stories already where Canadians are coming into the United States for like the presidential inauguration. They were denied because they answered essentially they were anti-Trump, and they were coming for the Women's March as well. So the Border Patrol viewed them as they were coming into the United States based on protest, and they said no, not coming in, even though they were coming in peacefully, and with 2 American citizens that were family. But aside from that, there's a lot of shakeup that's going on. Everything's kind of uncertain right now. There's a lot. Mainly, the big thing is in our government here in the United States, we're going through the process of vetting our elected officials and officials that Trump he himself is putting into position. They have to get passed by the Congress and the House, and obviously the Congress and House are not getting along as usual. So everything's just really long and prolonged, and it probably will take, no joke, until the first few weeks of March before all of the official important people for Trump's cabinet and representatives and everyone else that kind of needs to be there before they're in their respective positions, which is it's kind of up in the air. That's scary because if I'm flying to another country and then I want to return from said country, there's a lot of what ifs. Now, being that it is Canada, one of our closest and friendliest allies for many, many years.
Well, at least until we started raising the privacy hedge.
Yeah, I mean, we just Trump just nixed NAFTA, which hurts you guys.
Hang on, it's not nixed yet. It's under negotiation.
No, it's gone. Let's be honest, it's gone. That's not happening, and he'll find a way to kick it out. And
that's okay. He doesn't need our oil then.
He doesn't, because
or the pipelines coming through Canada from Alaska with his oil.
Yeah. Just shut off Alaska. That's fine, because in his mind right now is all of the states that do not want to do shale or fracking. He's saying, "Go for it! I own the EPA now, and I'm going to do whatever I want." But anyway, let's get off of politics because I could rant.
How did we get on to Battlestar Galactica?
Oh man, fracking, man. Fracking I don't know.
But this saves us from actually becoming a adult-rated explicit podcast.
Oh my god, fracking. But anyway, I'm legitimately kind of worried. I'm worried. I'm worried to the extent of mainly bringing items back in from Canada to the United States. I have no doubt that I myself, as a U.S. citizen, will make it back into the country, but it's going to Canada, looking and seeing and experiencing the cool stuff, and then packing it up and bringing it home. There's no telling the friendship between Canada and the United States after a negotiation such as NAFTA happens. Well,
let's just face it. You're not going to be able to take poutine with you anyways.
Yes, apparently.
It's just not going to survive in the suitcase, dude. But some artwork. There's some possibilities of artwork there.
Yeah, I think carry-ons will be okay on, but I think I'm good on statues. But you never know. I'm a stickler, just like you. So with that said, though, another thing that I do want to briefly talk about that you mentioned was Star Wars. We got the new title for the new Star Wars movie, The Last Jedi.
Yes, Episode 8, The Last Jedi.
So
however, is it Jedi singular or is it Jedi plural?
It's The Last Jedi. They're talking about jetties in the ocean. The Last Jedi. No.
Well, it's not the last Wookiee cookie.
I really don't know where they're going with this, but I did see an interview with Mark Hamill. I want to say it was one of those side interviews that you get after like a big late night interview with Jimmy Fallon or something like that. and they asked him, was like, "Hey, did you hear about the new title, Star Wars: The Last Jedi?" And he said, "I'm really bad with keeping secrets, and when we filmed our first movie, Star Wars: A New Hope, no one gave a damn about anything. They were like, if you want to talk about it, talk about it. It's going to build up more hype, whatever." He goes, "But now they have us so scared stiff on, non-disclosure agreements and everything else and keeping it so hush-hush. I did not want them to tell me the new title because I knew I would blab it out." And apparently, he knew the new title on the last day of filming of his scene. And he said, "I don't know why you told me this." So he has actually been avoiding interviews for quite a while on the upcoming movie because he didn't want to spill the beans.
Well, what's kind of interesting, though, is that he was, we talked about this on Legends of the Panel podcast, also here on the Geek Culture Cast Network. To reach out to us on, Twitter and Spreaker and everywhere else as Geek Culture Cast or Geek Culture Cast Network. Anyway, we'll come back to the socials later. Just throw it out there and around.
Yep.
But he was on Nerdist and with Hardwick. It was his third time around, so Mark Hamill times 3, and they made a big deal out of it. And what was kind of funny was that this interview was done before Carrie passed away. And Carrie only comes up a couple of times in it, which was kind of interesting the way he brought her up as well. But what I thought was the funniest thing was that he actually let out a bunch of secrets about a game that's being produced that's costing millions and millions and millions of dollars. He actually gave away a potential beta release date for Squadron 42.
Yeah, there's that, and then there's the fact...
It was 2019, but yeah.
Honestly...
We've been saying 2020, those of us in the community, so...
It really doesn't matter, because that game is not going to come out in its fruition that we wanted. But anyway, so we've got these 3 movies that we want to talk about. We're getting off topic like we love to. Great news, though.
It's been tied into things and that, but let's very briefly, one last thing about the Geek Culture Cast Network. We've been approached by another podcast. We're talking with them right now, and it looks like we may be growing again, which is kind of awesome. So watch for announcements about changes going on in the network, which are good changes, not bad changes.
This is true. Hopefully, if they are truly interested in joining the network, which is, we are just as excited as they are from the talks that we've been having. Hopefully, we snag another schno.
There's a little snow on my yard, yeah.
There's a little snow, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully we grab this other show, and phenomenal guys over at their show. Superb audio quality. We've had other people approach us in the past through socials and whatnot that have been interested in joining the network, but they just weren't there. And this is probably the first show that I honestly can say is, as far as quality and audio quality, it's up there.
I'm worried that they're actually better than us.
Yeah. Let's face it. We've been doing this for a while. We've had other projects in our past where you and I we're sticklers for audio quality. We know what we can produce and what we should produce, and then there's the whole. All right, this is what we got this week. Well,
but there's the other point too that when we produce, and then we'll get into the movies. I think the other thing is that what we try and produce is a high quality show, but we also realize that our listeners are looking for specific bandwidth. Yeah. So if we produce a high quality audio and then downsample it to something that's going to be the right size for our listeners, because they've told us what they're going to listen to and what size they want, we're good. And, it's unfortunate because we know that we sound really pretty dang awesome.
Yeah,
not our actual voices. The background noise and everything else in production.
We're really big on trying to make sure that you can hear us and you can understand us, and it doesn't sound like we're talking through kids' walkie-talkies, which I think the email that I sent them was when they responded to me. Yeah, exactly.
I like the overdrive that I ran on the intro.
Yeah, but if these guys join the network, which that's completely up to them. We made it very clear that we like growing organically. We don't shop around. We don't actively push. But they are right up our geek alley. That's the big other drawing point. They honestly, if we really tailored the Geek Culture Cast show, which was supposed to be a bi-weekly show of everything that's going on in the network and geek news and stuff like that. It was just a straight up geek show. It didn't matter what it was. It's almost like that show that they're doing, the people that are listening to, is almost, that's it. That's what we've always wanted.
So okay, I got to interrupt you here because I don't know what you're doing, but here on Appear IN, all of a sudden, every time you move, the camera's moving, and I'm seeing more and more of your wall and less of you.
Well, what's going on?
I know, but I'm not sure.
And it's me. I'm hitting the desk, and unfortunately, the camera's sliding. We're good now. I moved it because I wanted you to see the new bookcase.
Yes, no, I knew that anyway. But now, speaking of camera sliding, that falls right into the realm of Mr. James Cameron.
It does. All right, so we've got three movies.
Our topic for the night.
So
James
Cameron is the heart of the discussion, but we're pitting the three movies together. When I messaged you early on, you said that you want to talk about the Terminator, Avatar, and Alien. So just to clarify, I'm going to give you some dates on when these movies came out. The first movie of the three that we're going to talk about was Alien. It debuted in 1979, followed by The Terminator in 1984. And then, of course, most recently, where everyone was wild and awed, and it now has its own complete amusement park dedicated just to it, the movie Avatar, with James Cameron, obviously. So we've got three great CGI, respectively in their own time frame, phenomenal movies. You've got great writing, you've got great content, and you've got a great director. So where the heck do we begin, KJ? How are we going to pit these three together? Like, what do you think is the best way that we pit them all together?
Well, effectively, we've got three specific movie types here. So Alien, in reality, is a science fiction horror film, right? It is the chase of the monster. I mean, the alien, the face sucker to the coming out of William Hurt's chest, Ron Hurt, William Hurt, whichever, one of the Hurts. Anyway, it hurts me to think about it. Yeah, I know, bad puns. But, it was very physical. It was a physical effect movie because this was 79. It's right after Star Wars. It's right after Star Trek. Effectively, we were still in physical effects world. Star Wars and Star Trek, all of the visual effects that were done were either physical models on very small, mini stepper motors that created the movement for the ships, or it was scratches on the film, actually then hand colored to give us the red, green, and yellow laser beams that were being fired from the weapons in Star Trek and Star Wars. So you then look at Aliens truly was a physical effects movie, and James Cameron as director brought in some phenomenal people with him to do the effects. But when we look at that movie, I mean, it's a lot of darkness. There's not a lot of light in it. It's truly the baddie chasing. It's the maniacal baddie chasing the good guys. And in the end, there's only one survivor. And that's Ripley. And that's the whole thing of the movie. That's the premise of the movie. It's any great horror film, but it's a sci-fi horror film. We then moved to Terminator. So Terminator is less of a sci-fi film, more of an action film. Sci-fi action. So we've got sci-fi horror, sci-fi action. Schwarzenegger at probably one of the best roles that I can recall him in, because he's 98% silent through the film. And it's not to say that he needed to say anything, but what he says and the way it's delivered is what makes it so memorable, because it's those lines that we hear and we've seen him do in other movies. It was in The Expendables 2, and it was in The Expendables 3. I'll be back. Well, that's Terminator 2, but it's those type of things that really throw it in together, and you start realizing what that movie was. Then we move into Avatar, a more modern film, obviously. But when you look at the there's actually a very interesting parallel of Avatar to Alien. Exploration, starship.
Yeah, I can see where we're going with that one. That's fairly, yeah. I can see how you're tying that one.
But the interesting thing there is the story is a much different story. It talks about the difference in the time when James Cameron shot these movies, because effectively you've got before children and after children. Avatar is definitely
After children. Yeah.
It's a different approach to what could have been and really is a movie about genocide or attempted genocide. So, but we have to approach these from the standpoint of what one of these is his best film. You know, we're talking about 3 different periods in his career. But it's also, we can look at this from technical innovation. We can look at this from visual effects. We can look at this from the story that's visually told. And the scary part here is when I look at each of these movies individually, each one of them in my world is an 8.5 or above.
All right, so I'm going to jump in. I'm going to ask the hardest question of all to start it off. And I'll even go first if that kind of helps you. So let's say of the 3 movies, which is your favorite and why, and which deserves to be the best in your eyes? I'm honestly going to say this based on one thing alone in my own book. Now, all 3 of these movies are all rewatchable movies.
Oh yeah,
and that's big in my book. If your movie is good, I will rewatch it anytime that it's on TV. Now, let's say that all 3 of these titles are on at the same time on different networks. Which one do you choose? That's the big dilemma.
For me, it's easy.
I'm going to have to say that regardless, if I'm going to watch one of these 3 movies over and over and even watch it through the commercials, and I really hope we pick different ones, I'm going to watch Alien every single time. Yep. Oh, dang it. We picked the same one.
Well, no, because the reality is I can watch Terminator probably once a year. I can watch Avatar once every 2 or 3 years because it's just too much blue.
Yeah.
But quite honestly, Alien comes on every moment, every break. The way that they put it on for television, there is a scene that I must watch in every segment.
Yeah.
So if I only watch 20 minutes, if I've only got 20 minutes and Alien is on and I turn it on, I know I'm going to get 20 minutes of quality entertainment that's really going to resonate with me and go, that's why I love this movie.
I mean, even the special effects, as cheesy as they are today, I will watch that movie every minute of, yeah, exactly, every minute of every second of every day when I'm watching. I mean, it's such a great movie. The writing was... Let's be honest. The writing wasn't phenomenal. It wasn't super spectacular.
God, I mean, come on.
I mean, it's
Prometheus.
Yeah, but it's about the mix between the writing, the storytelling, and I will have to say that the cinematography in that movie, like when they, one of the absolute creepiest shots I've ever seen in cinematography in my life was when I'm trying to remember like the moment. But they're in the bottom of like this chamber or something like that, and they're walking. There's like chains or something hanging from their head, or maybe there's wires. I don't remember. But anyway, so they're walking down on this pedestal.
It's wire harnesses. It was wire harnesses. Yeah,
and they're fine. But then the camera slowly just pans up into this dark abyss, and you see like a little bit of a shadow slowly move. But then they're fine. And that keeps you on the edge of like, what corner is this going to pop out of? What's happening next? That is what scared the crap out of me. You didn't know where it was coming from.
The goal was of that movie. I mean, let's face it, 79 through about 83, we had the rebirth of horror. Because at that time frame, Freddy and Jason both made major comebacks in Friday the 13th and Halloween. Right? I mean, that time frame in the 81, 83, 85, there was a ton of those movies which were, it was the what we used to call them. I'm trying to remember what we did. not B movie scream films, but it was the, you crazy blonde girl, what are you doing? Of course you're going to die if you go outside. You're screaming at the screen, because it was all cookie cutter of all the same thing. I mean, we had Halloween, and we had Nightmare on Elm Street, and we had Revival of the Living Dead, the first round, which was still a Romero film, but it was in color this time. And then we had, so there was the zombie thing going on in the early 80s, as well as the true, I mean, when you looked at Fangoria magazine back then, it was full of horror movie special effects. It was not Aliens. It was not Star Wars and Star Trek. It was your real hardcore, vampires and werewolves and really nasty critters.
I had to Google Fangoria magazine.
You actually had to Google Fangoria magazine?
Well,
are you kidding me?
I didn't know what it was.
Oh, dude! Now I really feel old.
It's called Fangoria, RIA, sending.
Yes, I know there's an IA, but everyone called it Fangoria. And here's the catch, okay? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is a generational show. KJ the Comic Guy is in his mid to later 40s now, whereas Mr. Chulak is turning, what is that? He's leaving his 20-somethings this year.
Oh, let's not talk about it. So, sad news for you, Mr. KJ. It looks like, according to this last post of May 10th of 2016...
Yeah, Fangoria's gone.
2016 Fangoria's gone.
It was July or August was the last issue. Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, but get this.
They're collecting this magazine now. They're going out looking for copies of this magazine, as many as they can get. And I mean, people are amassing collections from the years, because the special effects work that was in there, the masters of prosthetics and everything, it's a portfolio of their work. It was a phenomenal magazine.
And anyway, I was just looking. It looks like the first issue that came out was in 1979, the same year that Alien came out.
Yep, and if I remember right, the first alien creature that they did, the first prosthetic that they did in that movie, was actually from the cantina scene. It was the orange alien. The orange face with the weird eyes, but it was a cantina monster. But also, you've got Frank Langella, Dracula, that had happened about 3 years before, and there was a big article in there about how they did a lot of the visual effects for that Dracula movie. Wait, was it Frank Langella? Yeah, it was Langella. It wasn't the Christopher Lee vampire movie. Anyway, I actually remember this because I probably had like issue 3 or 4.
So we talked about Alien and how we both agreed that if this movie is on any syndication movie or a syndication TV show or network, even with commercials, we're going to watch it. And that's
if it's on Netflix, if I'm sitting here and I have a choice of watching The 100 or watching one of the other what's the one, Shadowhunters, which is a whole vampire.
I was about to say, why are you trying to pit the 100 versus Alien? That's not
No, I'm not. But I'm saying it's like, I watch some of these series with my girlfriend. We kind of watch a lot of the stuff. And sorry. Anyway, the catch is that we sit there and we, if I've got a choice between watching one of these new series that's got new episodes on it or watching Aliens, I'll pick Aliens every day.
I mean, I'm all for it. What's so funny and so disconcerting is there are still video game companies out there that are trying to replicate this movie in the Alien series, and I still think that the original Alien cannot be, nor will it ever be, redone or copied. I don't think it's possible. I mean, I think it scared so many. I legitimately thought that when I was a kid and the first time that I watched this, when I had really, really bad heartburn, I thought there was going to be an animal that popped out of my chest. That's how scared I was when I watched this movie. I freaked out. I would go into the kitchen and I would chug milk because I thought that the little evil monster that was going to pop out of my chest didn't like milk and would die if I drank milk. That's how crazy it was. But anyway, so we've got two other movies, both of which are good movies. I'd have to say that number 2 in my line would probably be, and this is where the generational age gap is probably going to fall off. I enjoyed Terminator. I probably enjoyed the series more. I think I enjoyed Terminator 2 more than Terminator. And with that said, I'd have to say that storyline, emotional connection of the story, yes, it does get overdone, and I'm like, I can only watch it so much, mainly because it's so long, there's so much blue. But I have to say that quality, consistency, writing, I'd actually have to put Avatar at number 2 in the 1 to 3 comparison.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing, is that, effectively at the time when Terminator came out, you already had RoboCop, or RoboCop was coming out around the same time.
Yep.
At that point in time, we'd had Police Academy, we'd had Gremlins, we'd had Ferris Bueller's Day Off. There was a bunch of other movies that were all in that same time frame that lowered our expectations of quality movies. Not to say that they weren't good movies, but the production values were a little bit lower. They weren't the same level. And Hollywood was in that phase of just pumping out films week after week after week. And you were listening to the same voice every time telling us about another movie that you have to see.
Yep.
Bad voice. Anyway.
So let's talk about Avatar. Let's jump to Avatar real quick. Do you agree that Avatar is 2 of the 3? Or do you think it's 3 of the 2?
No, Avatar is number 2. Solid storylines, really solid visual effects. I think that it falls short a little bit in the cinematography because it was effectively shot for 3D. It was shot to be visually watched in IMAX 3D. And there aren't that many, at the time when Avatar first came out, IMAX 3D was kind of an innovative thing. Now just about every theater across the whole
does
3D
in
world
every
has
movie.
IMAX 3D.
Yeah. And even if it's not IMAX, they do like a PDX or CTX or FX or something like that, where it's essentially the same thing in the same format. It's just a different
right, exactly.
royalty. The reason why I like this movie was I like the fact that it took an old story that is recurring in history, where you've got a people that are going to a new world or a new location that isn't theirs, and then they're essentially colonizing and pretty much creating genocide to making it theirs.
Well, now remember, there's two sides of that story. The first one was find out about the indigenous people and creatures that live here. The second one was we're coming in and we're going to deforest it anyways. Yeah. Right. So it was big business against the science. So the science guys are kind of going, no, we want to find out and find out how we fit. Whereas big business is going, we don't care how we fit. We're just going to take over anyways and we'll relocate them.
Which is essentially the Pocahontas story in different modes. You've got...
Yeah, without the smallpox.
Yeah, without the smallpox. We didn't give them smallpox. Or so we know. But the reason why I got drawn into this movie... I mean, the story was great. The story is very overdone, though, to be honest. I mean, it's been in other movies. It's been old tales that just got redone. But here are some things that scientifically sparked my interest, and I was like, wow. So, for example, the first time that in a movie scientific research from our real world was being put into a movie as a possible storyline. For example, in the movie in Avatar, they have their tails that they connect to the Earth or their planet, and they have this whole intercommunication thing. Well, that was brought up according to James Cameron and a few of the other story writers that a few research scientists in botanical studies were finding out that certain plants could actually communicate to each other through their root system. And it brought a whole new light to people that, for example, let's say you're vegan. You want to be vegan for certain reasons, but the primary reason is the the harmful effects that it causes to other animals or sentient beings. They deem that plants aren't sentient beings, but if they're communicating through their root system and talking with one another, it's a sentient being. So, it kind of put that up there where it's like, what's going on? You're destroying our ecosystem that we share, that we understand and we love and we respect. You're coming in, you're mowing it down. You only want this one thing. And then you've got the other group where this guy who is a paraplegic essentially and decides to go and do this project where he can be this avatar and try and link into the indigenous population and learn about them and gain what's going on and understand their culture and their society. And like you said, big business wants one thing and researchers want another thing. And then you have this crash and then it's this separation. I like that tribal division or shift that was in the movie. It was a great anchoring point or schism or whatever you want to call it, where it was just the point where you've got, when the movie starts out, we're all in the same boat, but by the time that you get to the end of the movie, there are people in the audience that you're watching this movie with that may be different in different views on that boat. They could want to just wipe everything out and take it, or they could be completely for the planet and the people. But it was a thinking movie. It was a beautiful movie. It was very blue, greens and blues for sure. Visually striking for sure. But I definitely think number 2. Well done, well directed, well written, but I'm definitely not watching it every time it comes on TV. That's my viewpoint.
No, that's the catch, is that it's. I own a copy of Avatar, and I probably open it up and look at it once a year, maybe, and it's not one that I have to watch every time I turn around. That's what I'm. Well.
Now, the third movie that we've kind of just put there, probably because of, my guessing is writing and acting. And that would be The Terminator.
Yeah.
Now, The Terminator started a franchise that is, it's a huge franchise. There are so many sci-fi fans out there that hold the movie and the franchise itself into the closest regards of best movie of all time. In my eyes, when I look at the movie The Terminator, KJ, you can definitely chime in on this, I look at it as the precursor to something that would be great. I still think that Terminator 2, in my opinion, is a movie that I would watch over Avatar versus The Terminator. What would you think? Like, if
yeah.
So let's say you've got a Terminator movie in the franchise. Which do you think ranks higher than Avatar? Would it just be 2? Would it be the third? What is your go-to?
In all honesty, I liked Terminator 2. T2 to me was the best one, because we've got the flowy metal man, and we've got the original T5000 coming back, and that's the Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. All those lines that come out of it, and it's protecting John Connor. Yes.
Sarah Connor and John Connor. Yeah.
Yes. So I mean, that's the thing there, is that it was the movie lines were better. Arnold's acting was better in it. Linda Hamilton was better in it. There was a number of different things that just built a better movie. And Terminator 2, I think, was a better story. There was so much introduction and so much action that detracts from the character building in the first movie that we get in the second movie.
Now, one thing I definitely did want to kind of talk about, and this clearly shows, like if we just went on timeline alone on when these movies released, how far the cinematography and the CGI came from these movies. So we've got a movie that came out in 1979, which was Alien, which I honestly think that if you were to take 1979 Alien and compare it to 1984 Terminator, in my eyes, I feel like so much more money, so much more quality went into Alien versus Terminator, that watching these two movies side by side, I think that the special effects almost look identical. Would you agree or disagree?
I would agree.
Now, looking at Avatar, you see how far of a jump that is. I mean, James Cameron has had some movies in between. One of the more notable movies that he did that is not on this list was Titanic, but that was completely different type of scope and storyline, and not something that we normally talk to. But I think that was his first big jump into CGI that was, computer generated. And even with that, it was kind of flat in comparison to say something like Avatar. But I mean, you really can't compare Avatar to like Titanic, and you really can't compare Avatar to say Alien or Terminator, because you've got a hands-on approach with Terminator and Alien on their special effects, which in my personal opinion, to this day, I am 100% about personal effects mixed with CGI, but a 90% hands-on special effects, 10% CGI, where you take that 10% CGI and you go back and you polish what you couldn't do in special effects by hand. That's my personal opinion. I feel like so many industries and companies out there, they take 100% CGI. You can tell it's fake in the movie theater. It's overly done, and it just doesn't feel and look real. Whereas, even to this day, I will watch the movie Jurassic Park, and I still get goosebumps from the animatronics that they had.
Oh, yeah. You know, and I mean, when you look at Jurassic Park 3 and compare it, because the CGI that was done in that rather than animatronics, huge difference again.
Yeah. So, I think that the three movies we got here, the Terminator, Avatar, and Alien, they're all great. They're all different staples of James Cameron. I feel like there needs to be something in between Terminator and Avatar. Something else that's in, like the early to mid 90s other than Titanic. Was there another movie that he did that kind of stapled or put himself in there, or was there really that big of a gap? Let's look. Let's see what James
That's
Cameron
what I was thinking, was because there were other movies in between, but there's just nothing that I don't think that stands out as being that wow factor.
OMG, Becky. Did you know? I can't believe this. That there is an Avatar 2, an Avatar 3,
oh yeah,
and Avatar 4 and 5 scheduled according to IMDb.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, I know.
Oh, we have a 2018 release, a 2020 release, a 2022, and a 2023.
It's like, Terminator 2 in 3D was in 96. Titanic was 97. Then you're into Terminator Dawn of Fate, which is 2002. Terminator 3 is 2003.
Oh, one movie that we did not put on here that I did not know James Cameron did.
Abyss. I mean, we could put
that
on.
He did The Abyss. He did The Abyss. That was one of my favorite. I watch The Abyss every time it's on TV.
Yeah, but think about it. The Abyss is just aliens underwater.
I know, but The Abyss is one of those movies that I watch every time it's on TV. It doesn't matter. I love it. I love it. I love the story underwater. Anyway, I feel like we're kind of treading proverbial water here. How do you feel?
Well, I think that where we're at as far as the movies go, I think we've pretty much summed it up. And I think what we have to come down to, though, is let's do head to head. Where do we think each movie is from a cinematography, story, and visual effects standpoint? Let's start with Aliens. Our number, actually, no, let's go backwards. We'll go backwards. So Avatar was our number 2. Terminator, the original, was our number 3. So where do you put Terminator in today's standards? If you're rating it out of 10, where do you put it?
With everything said and done, if I were to rate Terminator today, I'd give it a 7.5.
Yeah, I was going to say about a 7.3. It's not quite as strong as a 7.5. So then Avatar?
Avatar in today's standards, I would say that the storyline could be a little bit more action-packed, a little bit more drama put in there, but I'd give it like an 8.5 to 8.8.
See, and I'm going an 8.1.
Yeah. So I'm giving like a 4-point difference between a 0.4 difference between our.
Yeah, but I'm always harder on the movies than you are, anyways. So then we come back to Alien.
Alien, I would definitely have to say with if they did this is huge for me. The storyline and the cinematography alone, not the special effects. Let's say special effects didn't even exist. Just off the bat, I would give it a solid 8. Just on that number alone. The writing and the cinematography and how they put everything together, solid 8. Now, the special effects are where it comes in. Obviously, the special effects versus, say, like Avatar, completely different ball game. Completely different ball game. If Alien were redone today, same story, same characters, but they were all in their youthful ages when they respectively recorded the movie the first time. If they were to do the 90-10 split that I said, where they do 90% special effects, 10% CGI to cover up the mixes, I would literally give the movie either a 10 or at minimum 9.5. But in today's standards, putting it up against Avatar, I'd give it a flat 9.
Yeah, I was going to say I actually go about 9.2.
9.2. Whoa! I was lower than you on this one. I think that the reason why I give it that more flat of a number is just because it's, in my eyes, it's just so hard to kind of compare different CGI and special effects. You know, where do you draw that line? How do you draw that line? I think that both of these movies in their own rights are phenomenal. Here's a hypothetical. KJ.
Yep.
If Avatar was recorded the same year that Alien came out, but with the same technology that they used on Alien for Avatar, where would you put Avatar? So obviously they don't have CGI. Now they're using prosthetics and everything else. Where would you put Avatar?
I don't know that you could do Avatar with prosthetics and without the CGI, just because of the number of people involved in it. When you think about what happened, let's go back in film history, and then we'll wrap things up because we're coming up on our hour time. But if you go back and look at Wizard of Oz, or any of the period pieces, even Roots did the same thing. Costuming became key, and Roots used up every piece of 1800s clothing that they had in Hollywood. They had to bring in children to use as actors because they couldn't find enough little people that were professional actors for Wizard of Oz. So, I mean, you're dealing with those type of things. How are you going to get the hundreds of people needed to put Avatar together? The battle scenes where you've got hundreds of these warriors coming, and how are you going to deal with the creatures? The creatures are obviously not going to move as fluidly as they did. The birds that they rode and the creatures that they were on. So there's things you cannot do with prosthetic that have been done with CGI that just make it feel more real. And I think that's the thing, is that Avatar tried to do it with prosthetics and visual effects or physical effects. I think it would end up at this point probably around a 6.5. The story's fantastic, but I don't think you could do it the old way.
Now,
I think you had to be at the point where James Cameron was able to produce it. You had to be at that point in the technology to make it work.
Now, here's my thing. So you say that, and I agree with you 100% if they try to do it one way. Now, this is my way. If I were to do Avatar, and in the means that James Cameron had, excuse me, in the means that James Cameron had, how do you hide stuff that isn't done well on camera? How do you hide it? You make it darker.
Yeah.
How bright is Avatar?
Well, and that's the thing with Aliens, right? With Alien and Aliens and those movies.
And Terminator, they're all
dark. Because the only thing you had to actually see was the materials that you're going to see visually. So the chains and the cables coming down out of the sky. You didn't have to see that there were no panels above that. There's just a bunch of cables hanging from scaffolding. But you had to believe that it was there. And that's a biggest part of the director's job in cinematography, is to make you believe what's not there is there.
So what I'm saying is, I think that if James Cameron was doing the same thing and he made it darker and he did use prosthetics and let's say he called up, hey, Jim Henson, can you get your butt over here? I know you're probably in your infancy right now or in the middle of your peak. Let's do something. I have a feeling that something could be done in a decent amount.
79 was the beginning. It was the Muppet Show was already on, so it was it was after the main Sesame Street run. So I mean, the potential. I mean, Television Workshop, Monster Workshop existed at that point. So who knows what we might have seen from Frank Oz. Ooh, Yoda.
Anyway, phenomenal 3 movies that we put together. I think this is the best 3, or even the best pitting movies that we've done in a while.
I think we picked the way I picked the films was basically, I just said, I need a director that's directed a fantasy as well as a sci-fi, and I happened to find James Cameron as the director, and that was my key, was find a director and then identify more films if there was, and there was 3 in our case this time. But if you don't like this show, or if you do like this show and you want to comment back to us, you can reach us on Twitter at Geek Culture Cast, right? Not Geek Culture Cast Network, is at Geek
Culture Cast.
Also at Warp My Tardis, because we've got that out there as well. Reach out to us at Geek Culture Cast, and our email is actually it's kjcomicguy at geekculturecast
network.com.
Right? Yes, network. Sorry, that's network. We got too many of them. We're all messed up, dude. And you're sending me Facebook messages at the same time here. All of a sudden, I got stuff lighting up all over the place.
So if you want to follow all of us, the easiest way to follow us is on our social medias. Our social medias, like KJ was saying, is you can follow us at Geek Culture Cast on Twitter for Geek Culture Cast. That is our network. That is what disseminates all of our information and new podcasts. You can follow us at Warp My TARDIS, which is this show if you want just Warp My TARDIS news. And then, of course, our other shows are at Legends Panel and at Active Geek Prod, which is Active Geek Productions. Hopefully we might get another podcast in there, and we'll see how that goes. Currently right now our website is going under another renovation, mainly because we keep getting hacked and we're fixing
bot hacks. It's bot hacks that are flooding our system.
They're flooding the system. We wanted it to be an open system where members and fans could join and make their own account, and they could talk on a forum system. Yeah, now we're just turning that off temporarily.
But hey, I like your topics, but you should really buy my book about male genitalia.
Yeah, no one wants to buy that. No one wants to hear about it. So we nixed that. So we're going to be changing that, and we probably are going to go to the most simplest form, and that is going to be a blog form of just what we have to say, what is currently going on. And then there's going to be a very generic webpage that has every current episode of the Geek Culture Cast Network. That is going to be the simplest way, where you can download just individual shows, individual episodes. While our backlog is up there, but it will be very static, very plain Jane.
So for our Apple friends, we are on iTunes. That's where you probably found us already. So you can get us on our individual shows, or you can get us at Geek Culture Cast Network. And at the same time, we also have Spreaker and Shoutcast. No, we're not doing Shoutcast anymore. But we've got 5,000 different podcast availabilities. If you look on there and you can't find us, just switch to another one.
We're on TuneIn, we're on Mixcloud, we are on SoundCloud, we're on iTunes, and then of course my personal favorite is your own RSS grabber. Doesn't matter who it is, what it is, you can always download our episodes via the RSS grabber. With that said, thank you so much for listening to this show. We will be back on the network next Tuesday at 8 p.m. with Legends of the Panel podcast with myself, KJ here, and the great Lady Archer. We also have an interview scheduled next week. We will be speaking with the creator of a comic book called Lonesomes. His name is Ryan Little. It's a phenomenal comic. If you are a fan of Pokemon or Pokemon-like stories, the story is basically about a boy who is, well, he's lonesome, and his imagination creates a Pokemon-like creature and system in a world in which he jumps
His
into.
dog fox is kind of cool.
I like the dog fox. It is kind
The
of
dog
cool.
fox is kind of cool.
So,
I gotta tell you, I looked at that first issue. I'm looking at the visuals. I'm not even going into the body copy. I'm just looking at the visuals, and I was like, all right, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. Issue number 2 actually is currently out right now on Kickstarter. We will post that on our socials, especially on Geek Culture Cast and Legends of the Panel Twitter. So be sure to go over there, do some research, and we hope to get him on the show this coming Tuesday at 8 p.m. Great guy, Ryan Little. We're going to interview him. And then we still have 3 more interviews coming up before the end of March. So we're looking pretty big.
Including a really big one, right?
2 big ones. 2 big ones.
Hold on. I know about one of these. What's the other one? Wait a minute. Off the air.
Off the air, absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
Everything out there.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening to Legends of the Panel podcast. And we
or
warp
TARDIS,
my TARDIS. See, this is why. Yeah, I shouldn't be talking. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will be back next week on Tuesday at 8 p.m. for Legends of the Panel podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chulak, with my other co-host, KJ the Comic Guy.
KJ the Comic Guy. Telling you to read more comic books, watch more sci-fi, and get out there and experience the world.
Woo!
And then we actually will have a real trailer outro coming.
One day myself.
I got halfway there over Christmas.
But until then... This has been a presentation of the Geek Culture Cast Network. To find out more, email us at geekculturecastnetwork@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter @geekculturecast.